and start from yeah.
A warm good morning to all. Welcome to this webinar on mindfulness in leadership. At the very outset, I would like to thank the management and the Dean of our institute, Ramya Institute of Management, for providing us the opportunity to host webinars on contemporary areas of management. My sincere thanks to all my students who have logged in large numbers, my colleagues, my professional colleagues from educational institutions and various organizations who have registered to be a part of this webinar on mindfulness in leadership. I am Dr. Padmaja, and I'm an associate professor with Ramya Institute of Management. Let's start with a quote. Mindful leadership keeps you cool and energetic in situation so that you can make the best possible decisions. Well, this quote has been given by one Mr. Amit Ray. He's the founder of Mindfulness Meditation for Corporate Leadership and Management. To begin with, let me start with an example from the corporate world. This example of Janice Marturano will explain clearly the concept of mindfulness in organizations and how it could deeply impact individuals and leaders in particular. Janice Marturano, who is currently the founder and executive director of Institute of Mindful Leadership, shares her own experiences through this anecdote. At what was supposed to be the height and pinnacle of her career responsibilities, Janice Marturano hit a new rock bottom. As vice president for a global food giant, General Mills, she was given the charge and responsibility of completing the complex task of acquisition of her rival firm Pillsbury in the year 2000. Well, we all know during mergers and acquisitions, a lot of jobs are at stake. So she also faced the similar problem. During this phase of acquisition, she had to face the inquiry of the Federal Trade Commission because she knew that if the acquisition would be blocked, she would be answerable to thousands of her employees, which meant that the jobs of her employees and people were at stake who were likely to lose their employment if the deal was questioned or blocked by the FTC, that is the Federal Trade Commission. Meanwhile, her team was desperately and busily providing truckloads of data to the FTC and other evidences in response to the inquiry which they had posed. The company had hoped that the transaction would take a minimum of 6 months to get over this phase. But surprisingly, it lasted for nearly 18 months, with Janice Marturano slogging for almost 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. She was continuously working to ensure that this phase should move over smoothly. During that time, she lost both her parents, plus she also had the responsibility of managing her own family with 2 little school-going kids. So it was difficult for her to strike a balance between personal and professional life. The acquisition was eventually approved, but Marturano found that she could not bounce back. She found it extremely difficult to come back to pace. At the end of those 18 months of struggle, she says, and I quote, "I had lost my resilience." She looked into grief counseling as an option to bounce back and to make a good comeback. But eventually it was more than the death of her parents that had brought her low. She was completely burnt out. Well, my friends, this condition is generally described as a psychological response to chronic emotional turmoil that every individual and leader undergoes in organizations, resulting in mental exhaustion, stress, detachment, diminished motivation, and decreased performance. With this example, I would like to introduce the topic of mindfulness, and subsequently, I will also touch upon the relevance of mindfulness in leadership. Have a close look at this picture. What does this picture say? I'll just give a pause for you to look at this picture. Well, although your body is physically present, is your mind present? Or is it stuck in the past, thinking about the other tasks that you had already done? Or is it worried about the future, which is yet to come? Are you worried about the future, which is uncertain, or the past, which was over? Or is your mind in the present? So mindfulness is an age-old practice which has perhaps never been trendier in workplace across the globe. Today, it is the most relevant buzzword when it comes to leadership at workplace. Mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and being non-judgmental. You can see the quote written at the bottom. Mindfulness improves your capacity for self-discovery and empowerment. Theoretically, mindfulness is a mental practice that has emerged from 2,500-year-old Buddhist teachings and has turned into a booming industry. It involves focusing attention on the present moment for a sustained period, having moment-to-moment awareness, that is, being aware of what is happening in the present. It is meant to train people to observe their thoughts and feelings without necessarily acting on them. It is meant for you to ponder over your thoughts so that you can choose the wisest path rather than being driven by your emotions. So mindfulness is all about being non-judgmental. So I look at this picture once again. Are you currently mindful when you're listening to this talk? Or are you trying to clear your mails, messages from your WhatsApp, or clearing some of the images which you've received in your cell phone? Well, generally we have this tendency of being mentally occupied, which reduces our efficiency at workplace. Moving ahead, I will introduce the concept and explain the history of mindfulness. The advent of the modern movement of mindfulness is generally credited to the molecular biologist Professor John Kabat-Zinn, who in the year 1979 established a program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction at the University of Massachusetts. Professor John Kabat-Zinn was born in the year 1944, is an American professor emeritus of medicine and the creator of the Stress Reduction Clinic and the Center for Mindfulness in Medicine, Healthcare, and Society at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. Kabat-Zinn was a student of the noted Zen Buddhist teachers such as Philip Kapleau, Thich Nhat Hanh, and Seong San, and a founding member of Cambridge Zen Center. His practice of yoga and studies with Buddhist teachers led him to integrate their teachings with scientific findings. He teaches mindfulness, which he says can help people cope with stress, anxiety, pain, and illness. Well, friends, today, the stress reduction program created by Professor Kabat-Zinn, that is Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, or MBSR, as it is called in its initials, is offered by a lot of medical centers, hospitals, health maintenance organizations, to various individuals to deal with chaos and turmoils in their life. Moving ahead, let us see how mindfulness can be seen to balance our busy, chaotic life. We are back with this slide. Have a look at this picture once again. Very powerful. Is your mind full or are you mindful? We need to expand our repertoire, train your mind to be in the present, and learn how to handle the chaos and stress by taking a purposeful pause and taking a moment to reflect. Now here I would like to bring into your attention the recent lockdown which impacted not just in India but across the globe. Last 2 months gave us an excellent opportunity, and it gave us a forceful opportunity to be with our family members, to spend quality time with our loved ones. It gave us an opportunity to forcefully pause, introspect, and spend quality time with all of us, have good food, enjoy movies in the television, of course, by not stepping out. So it gave us a time to balance our chaotic life. So when I say pause, this gave us an excellent opportunity to pause and give a balance to our chaotic life. So the obvious next question would be, how to train yourself to pause? It's a very genuine question. All of us ask, no matter how old we are. How do we train our minds to pause and take a break? Well, there's definitely no firm answer or a strict technique. Try to be more consistent, redirect your mind to think of the present and not keep it preoccupied with thoughts of the past at your workplace. Leave your thoughts behind about your family, meetings, kids. It's easier to say. However, I'd like to say that just as you train your physical body to be fit, you also need to train yourself to be mentally fit. One need not be a victim of their thoughts. However, be deeply connected. Most of the times, let us say, my friends, our mind is only partially connected. So we would have seen that during official meetings and presentations, we tend to invariably look at various other images, WhatsApp messages, clearing pictures, mails, without paying attention to the deep discussions that take place in these meetings. So mindfulness draws you to be in the present moment while being focused and completely attentive. These simple techniques cannot be taught. One needs to practice to imbibe them in your daily routine. These techniques are actually latent. You just need to practice them and bring forth this aspect. Now we have a short video to understand what is mindfulness in a nutshell.
There is a story, usually attributed to the Native American tradition, which illuminates different ways of paying attention. An elder, talking to a child, says, "I have two wolves fighting in my heart. One wolf is fearful, vengeful, envious, resentful, and deceitful. The other wolf is compassionate, loving, generous, truthful, and peaceful." The child asks, "Which wolf will win the fight?" The elder responds, "The one I feed." That doesn't mean we try to deny or hurt or kill the angry wolf. If we did that, we'd end up in a long battle, all the while somehow making that wolf more powerful through our hostility and fear. Hating that wolf sucks the strength right out of us. Instead, we calmly pay attention to the angry wolf and let go of believing they have the answers. If we can do that, they end up lying down next to us, no longer an enemy. We help strengthen the kind and loving wolf, giving it nourishment and support so that we can follow it. That peaceful wolf can become our steady companion and show us the way through all kinds of different life experiences. Restful or chaotic, enjoyable or disappointing experiences may come and go, but we can have a guide with us through it all. This is what mindfulness can help you do. Mindfulness allows us to see our thoughts and feelings as they are beginning. It's very powerful to know what we're feeling as we're feeling it, know what we're thinking as we're thinking it. With mindfulness, we can choose what will strengthen and bring into action, and we can choose what we will gently let go of. We don't have to be at the mercy of old habits or old ways of thinking or old ways of being. We are empowered. It just takes practice.
Next slide. Yeah. So I'd just like to summarize that short video. As we just saw, every individual experiences the two wolves within. The angry wolf, which represents the negative vibes, and the positive wolf, which represents compassion, love, generosity, and truth. It is in our hands to decide which wolf we choose to feed. So mindfulness empowers us to let go of our old, age-old habits and choose what is required for the present moment. Now let me come to the more important aspect of mindful leadership, which is so relevant in organizations today. So when I talk of mindful leadership, let me start with who's a mindful leader. Yeah, a mindful leader is someone who embodies his or her presence by cultivating the four fundamentals of excellence. That is focus, clarity, creativity, and compassion. I'll just expand this briefly. Often we all live in an autopilot mode. As we tend to lose our wisdom, we refuse to be creative, and we are unable to think beyond a mundane routine. Then we feel life becomes quite monotonous and boring, and we are not able to move forward. So mindfulness is making a deliberate, conscious effort to dwell into the present moment. So when I talk of mindful leadership, let us see the current state of situation of leaders in organizations. They are multitasking. They are completely stressed out in inducing tasks, responsibilities, various negotiations, meetings. So in today's business climate, the responsibilities and expectations of leaders seems to be quite demanding, almost like superhuman efforts and abilities. A typical leader has to juggle these stress-inducing demands, such as interacting with various clients and different types of people, maximizing profits, making major decisions which impact the organization and take it forward for the success, delegating tasks judiciously, that's a very important task, being responsible for the organization's performance, communicating an aligned vision throughout, and motivating others to maximum levels of productivity. Again, in no order, most of these tasks are extremely tough and challenging for leaders. So how does mindful leadership work? Mindful leadership entails of being aware of one's internal strengths. It enables a leader to respond to a situation as it arises, to respond to the reality of constant changes from a place of deep calm and focus, and to have the presence of mind to face the reality of any situation. Now, I'll touch a little bit of a theoretical concept here. When we teach leadership to B school students, we talk of the trait theories, we talk of the behavioral theories, we talk of contemporary theories of leadership. So, one such aspect of leadership could be dwelling in the current moment. There's no set rule to this or a pattern. You just need to take a judicious decision by living in the present moment and face the reality of the tough situation. Well, that's a wonderful picture of how mindful leaders think. They have two specific ways of processing. They are able to personally separate themselves from stressful events. They learn to not take organizational threats personally. Very easy to say, but extremely difficult. I'll repeat. They learn to not take organizational threats personally and are able to observe situations from a neutral position rather than becoming personally engaged. Point number 2, which I wanted to drive down, they are able to control their reactions to threats or difficult situations so that they can process their options rather than reacting without thinking. Let me validate these required traits. As I already said, when we teach leadership in class, we talk of the trait theories, confidence, honesty. So a recent study was conducted and was published in the HBR, where these traits were validated with a recent survey which was published in Harvard Business Review. As you can see in this picture, a total of 195 global leaders were asked to rate the qualities and the traits of leaders to understand the various competencies to rise to the top. Well, the results narrowed down to 5 major qualities required. The first being strong ethics and safety. Then it was followed by self-organizing, efficient learning, nurturing growth, connection, and belongingness. So my friends, leadership excellence involves when leaders embody leadership presence in the service of others. They are leading with excellence, whether it's a classroom, team, or an organization. It involves paying attention to situations with the intention of managing their awareness in a way that stops them from judging a situation prematurely. And the last and the most important point, of course, last but not the least, is having compassion for your colleagues and your team members. It is so vital for growth, for success, and that is why we say, when a leader is being mindful, he ought to be compassionate with his colleagues and team members. So leadership excellence is directly related to your ability to connect to self, others, and the community, your ability to skillfully initiate or guide change, that is, be responsive, be able to hold ambiguity, be collaborative, and be respectful. Many of you would have heard or be aware of this Gee's theory of leadership. Have you seen geese flying? Geese are migratory birds when they move from one place to the other. So the geese theory is an excellent example when we talk of leadership. So geese fly in a V formation. And when they fly in a V formation, the overall flight efficiency increases by about 71% as flying individually in the sky. So, standing by your team, the overall efficiency increases. These geese quack when they fly together to keep pace and speed, and by doing so, they're trying to encourage each other. So similarly, in our lives also, we would have seen, and we have seen, how the cricket team, how the captain of the cricket team keeps encouraging and motivates his team members in the cricket field. So the geese theory of leadership is very, very inspiring to be with your team members and have compassion for your colleagues. I must say that the leader must try to stay calm despite, even in the cricket field, even if the team happens to lose, he still manages to keep his calm and not throw his anger. So a leader, the captain, needs to stay calm in order to take his team forward. Thus, an anxious mind is an unproductive mind that doesn't inspire the best in others. A top priority for a mindful leader is cultivating peace of mind. Let us see how mindfulness can be applicable at workplace. While there is little scientific research into burnout levels in the executive ranks, a 2013 Harvard Medical School study discovered that 96% of senior leaders reported feeling burned out due to some degree, while around a third said that they suffered from extreme burnout. Research also states that when a CEO is stressed out, the rest of the company feels it because it percolates down. And if those stress levels get too high, employees are likely to move on and quit. Hence, it is so critical for a CEO to keep his stress in check and be mindful. We also say change starts at the top. Change begins at the top. So it becomes highly imperative for the top management to initiate and practice the art of mindfulness. Massive companies like Google and Intel offer mindfulness courses for their employees to provide stability. A study recently published in the Organizational Behavior and Human Decision Processes journal found that even just a few minutes of mindfulness, of course subsequently leading to meditation per day, makes employees more efficient, helpful, and enhances the overall productivity. At the individual level, one needs to have a mindfulness practice that creates space for one to take time to breathe and become a better leader. This can bring in incredible results, not just for your team, but also for the overall organization. Let's see a few examples of mindful leaders from the corporate world. I've picked out some global leaders. Nancy Slomowitz, she's the CEO of Executive Management Associates. She helped to lower her company's healthcare costs by offering employees classes in mindfulness. She expressed that, and I quote, "The workplace environment soon grew from toxic to harmonious, among other positive changes. And surprisingly, the company's cost of healthcare insurance actually went down due to a reduction in sick claims just by practicing mindfulness." Another example, Steve Jobs, former CEO of Apple Inc., said that his daily mindfulness practice and routine taught him to concentrate and ignore distractions. That's why he became the CEO of Apple. It also helped him learn to trust his intuition and curiosity over analysis and preconceptions. Ariana Huffington, president and editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post Media Group, she wrote that mindfulness benefits not only individual health, but also at the bottom line, executives. Stress reduction and mindfulness don't just happen or don't just make us happier and healthier. They are a proven competitive advantage for any business. For any business that wants one. Evan Williams, co-founder of Twitter, stated that he came back to mindfulness after launching Twitter as a way to sustain higher performance, both his own and that of his employees. Padmaja Warrior, Chief Technical Officer of Cisco Systems, who oversaw 22,000 employees, told the New York Times in 2012 that taking time to practice mindfulness and unplug helped her to manage it all. She says, and I quote, "It's almost like a reboot for your brain and your soul. It makes me so much calmer." Moving ahead, friends, let's discuss on the focus areas for mindfulness. I have 3 points mentioned here, very relevant. They are metacognition, allowing, and curiosity. Let me take each point individually. Metacognition. This is the ability to take a step back, to observe at a distance what is happening around you. This gives the leader a meta view of the situation and take charge. By doing so, he becomes more aware of his own reactions to situations. Without metacognition, there is no means of escaping the autopilot mode. Remember the geese theory which I discussed earlier, where the leader takes a back seat when one of his team members or one of the geese feels slightly tired. So he takes a back seat and allows the other colleague to come up in front and take the lead. So metacognition is the ability to take a step back and observe from a distance what is happening. However, still being there with the team to provide complete support. The second point is allowing. It refers to being open to what is happening without judgment or yourself or anyone else. Without allowing, our criticism of ourselves and others crushes our ability to observe what is really happening. This was stated and observed by 2 researchers, Reeds and Chaskalson, researchers at the Harvard. And the third point, and very relevant today, is curiosity, which is where it talks about the most effective leaders have a strong sense of curiosity. And they're open to learning more in all situations. They embrace the opportunity to gather as much information as possible before making any decisions. Without curiosity, we have no impetus for bringing our awareness into the present moment and staying with it. Again, a little bit of more in-depth discussion about compelling behaviors of mindful leaders. People sometimes assume that leaders are more adept in rising above all challenges and roadblocks. However, Let me emphasize that leaders face the unique kind of stress, and managing it can be extremely challenging. Remember, I gave the example of Janice Marturano. Even though the acquisition took place, she was completely stressed out, and it was very difficult for her to bounce back to normalcy. So when we talk of compelling behaviors of mindful leaders, I have listed down a few. Leaders remain completely focused when people talk to them. Very often, our minds are constantly full of chatter and clutter, and studies suggest that our minds wandered during nearly half of our work, walking and waking hours. Mindful leaders should be able to give complete attention to their team during discussions and meetings, not just listening. It also involves deep listening and solving the problems of employees in their head, and listening without judgment. So listening to the words spoken and also listening to the unspoken words. So in leadership, there's a concept called listening with discernment, where the employees, even without having spoken, the leader should be able to judge and understand through his emotions and body language of his team members. The second important behavior of a mindful leader is that they make thoughtful decisions. Every decision that leaders make involves a certain level of bias, judgment, and emotion, often, many a times. But they are making them with their heads or their heart. Are we thinking on that? Are those decisions coming from the heart, or is it a spontaneous decision? So mindful leader tends to take in thoughts both from his mind, heart, and head, and tries to emphasize that better decisions can be harnessed through awareness, and this awareness can reduce biasness, judgments, and emotions. The next point is, and very relevant in today's contemporary world, mindful leaders empower team members. Team member performance improves when they feel empowered and unconditionally trusted. It goes without saying, when team members are trusted, they tend to perform in a much better way, with more confidence, with stronger ability to drive forward. So when I say unconditionally trusted, leaders should unconditionally trust their team members. Mindful leaders give their full attention of their presence. They need to be with them during struggles and notice employees' strengths, try to overcome the weaknesses and push on those strengths which could compel him to perform better. Try to be more patient rather than overpowering with weaknesses. This will lead to drive success in the organization. So typical mindfulness activities would include mindful walking. So when I say mindful walking, just be aware of where you walk without considering, by not being directionless, I would say. Be aware of where you're walking. Tread the path by being aware of the present moment. Mindful, non-judgmental awareness of breath, body, feelings, emotions, and thoughts. Be aware of what you think. Be aware of your feelings, your thoughts during your conversations. Mindful eating. When I was putting this point, I was thinking, is it really essential to be counted as a typical mindful activity? And I realized that you should be aware of what you're eating, how much you're eating, to have control over your own diet. When you're eating, we tend to look into a phone, we are talking with your colleagues. So mindful eating could also be a mindfulness activity. Mindful body scan in a sitting or a lying down position. That is, be aware of your posture when you're sitting. When you're working, be aware of your position that you take in your chair, and mindful listening without any judgment, or mindful listening with non-judgment. Moving ahead, the very important slide which I wanted to discuss. Some of the myths of mindfulness. We may think that mindfulness is just being perfect. If everyone was so perfect, where was the need for us to talk of interventions and change management? If everything was so perfect, if all leaders were so full of mindfulness, where was the need for us to talk of different kinds of interventions required to turn around an organization? So some of the myths of mindfulness I would like to highlight. Mindfulness is meditation. Well, the two terms, mindfulness and meditation, often get thrown around interchangeably. While mindfulness leads to meditation, it need not necessarily be just meditation. In leadership, there is often a strong focus on doing, whether it is talking to your team members, connecting with your suppliers, vendors, networking with the outsiders. After all, without action, there is no progress. But all these actions can benefit from one thing, that is being more mindful. So today, mindfulness is, although linked to meditation, breathing, stretching, reduction of stress, they are all good practices to implement as they can relieve stress. But mindfulness is not just an exercise. It is something that leaders can practice in their daily work lives. The second myth is, So mindfulness is an awareness. It is paying attention on purpose, living in the present moment. You don't need a meditation cushion to practice mindfulness. Or even more than a split second to be mindful. It is observing what is happening around you without evaluation. Mindfulness meditation, by contrast, is a practice. While mindfulness can also take place spontaneously, mindfulness meditation is a conscious effort. It's all about the awareness, but sustained awareness. It is bringing your attention back when it inevitably wanders away, many a times, even in a split second. So the classic example of meditation could be your breath, how you're aware of your breathing in and breathing out. It could also be your body or thoughts running into your head. The second myth is mindfulness is about taking time out to rest and relax. If all of us were to take out time to rest and relax in an organization, how would we work and complete our tasks? So it's not just about taking rest and relaxing. Mindfulness isn't just relaxation. Stress reduction may just be a side effect, checking in with your thoughts, body, and impulses, which decreases your chance of getting surrounded. Likewise, without judgment, part may result in less stress. We all feel lighter with less judgment. But fundamentally, mindfulness is not just taking rest. Even remembering to be mindful can be a bit of work and progress into being mindful, remembering to do your tasks. The third myth is that mindfulness is having no thoughts. Is it possible for us and for our brains to not have any thoughts? I think it's quite difficult. However, the idea that mindfulness requires a blank mind is a myth that makes many people believe that they can't be mindful. But just like that, you can't stop your heart from beating or your stomach from digesting. You can't stop your brain from thinking. Think about it this way. Mindfulness isn't a suspension of your thoughts. It's a suspension of your judgments. As I said earlier, it is being non-judgmental. Be aware of your thoughts in the present moment. It's an observation of what's happening in the present situation. Sometimes you need to plan also for your future. So I would say that it is impossible to be in the present moment all the time. Don't we plan for a future? Don't we have short-term plans and long-term plans? We teach in management that management is all about planning, organizing. So we do plan for the future. We do have goals. We do have our objectives in place. We do have our future plans. So it is impossible to not plan for the future. You need to plan. For example, in our personal lives, we say, what's in for dinner? Where do we go tomorrow? Shall we go out for an outing? So it's important to reflect on the past sometimes. Also when we say, next time I'm going to try and do much better. I'm not going to repeat those mistakes. I'm not going to eat that food. It has spoiled my health and stomach. So while we also dwell about our past actions, we sometimes also need to focus on our future and plan out accordingly. So mindfulness, it is not just about having no thoughts for the future. That's another myth. The fourth myth, which I would like to discuss, is that mindfulness is bliss. Being mindful does not necessarily lead us to bliss all the time, my friends. That's a tough one. It sometimes leads you to notice you're defensive after losing your temper. It is not just joy. Instead, it is awareness of joy. Mindfulness helps us to take a step back from the constant inputs from our sensory information and the constant output of thoughts and feelings. Yeah, I just discussed this. Mindfulness is not just bliss. Let us now look at some of the benefits of mindfulness. I've taken 3 pertinent, relevant perspectives: organization's point of view, the student's point of view, and from the individual's point of view. From the organization's point of view, I've put down 3 points. How does mindfulness help in managing your team, communicating more effectively, and developing better strategies for growth and success? Now, when I come to the first point, just think of this scenario. One of your employee, Charlie, is delivering a late report. Additionally, Charlie, the employee, also has a lot of other tasks and assignments which he needs to complete. They're on his hand, he needs to complete, he needs to submit the report to his leader, to his boss. He's doing his best to complete in whatever capacity he can. The reason Charlie was trusted with the report in the first place was because he was known for his quality of work and timeliness. So being mindful of the fact that he may already be overwhelmed can help you make the sense of delay. So instead of coming down hard on him, as a stressed and overburdened leader might be inclined to do so, you could help him out by asking another employee to assist him with completing the task. So there, the role of a mindful leader is of great help. Instead of taking on him harshly, maybe his team members could help him in completing the task. By doing so, you can build stronger bonds and stronger relationships with your team members. That, of course, increases the organization's overall productivity. The second relevant benefit of mindfulness is communicating more effectively. All good leaders communicate effectively. Internal dialogue is a constant within all of us. Sometimes we assume that the conversation goes on in our head is exactly the conversation others are having with themselves. So there's a good chance. It is easy to make up stories about others, what they know, what their predisposition is, and how they handle challenges. This is where communication can easily break down. You may think that you told your team members that the reports require cover sheets. You would have thought that you've said that. Did you actually send out a reminder or a reminder mail or a message or an email stating this? Is it in the procedure documents? Did you follow up using the internal messaging system? Did you restate your thought to your employee? Well, the best leaders are more effective when they are effective communicators. If you're mindful about your communication, you will find fewer things slipping through the cracks. And it also leads to good documentation of the work. And the third relevant point of benefits of mindfulness is developing better strategies. Some of the best leaders are known to spend a considerable amount of time just thinking and planning what could be done in a better way. This is a form of mindfulness on its own. Thinking allows you to establish clarity on your goals that you need to set, the next steps that you need to take forward, how to innovate and create a competitive advantage for your company, taking it forward. Leaders should be spending more time on high-value tasks, and strategic thinking should be considered high value. That is why in the levels of organization, we say strategic thinking is at the highest. Leaders need to be, when they talk of the mission, vision, strategies to take forward the goals of the organization, leaders need to be cognizant of what to do next, as the demands of the market are constantly changing and also challenging. So strategic thinking can lead to new ideas, insights, new ways of doing things, and be more proactive and innovative towards the culture. You can develop a more effective team by directing your focus towards strategy and building a healthy culture. Mindfulness can extend into every facet of your life. As you achieve success, it empowers the leaders to take forward the team in a much more effective way. Now, since a lot of our students are also logged on, I thought I should put this point of benefit of mindfulness to students. We all know exams are approaching. Every institution is planning to conduct your online exams to complete your 2 years of your study. So mindfulness and being aware of the moment could help students in reduction of stress, helps you to increase your focus and attention. It builds up and improves your emotional intelligence. It increases your empathy and respect for others, builds up and increases your resilience, improved physical well-being, and improved creativity and collaboration. And as benefits to every individual, mindfulness helps you to be more calm, more consistent, being more non-judgmental, better listeners, creative problem solvers. I have a few more slides to complete. Some of the challenges that could be posed to mindfulness would include: do we say that mindfulness is an ongoing effort? It is a challenge, very difficult. Every day in and day out, we need to remind ourselves to be non-judgmental. So it's a challenge. Mindfulness is an ongoing effort. It takes a lot of effort, but the good news is that the longer you practice, the easier it becomes. The more joyful your life becomes, less stressful. At first, your thoughts would end up your mind would be chaotic, it would be full of clutter, but everything will slowly turn to be much more calmer if you try to practice mindfulness. There will be eventually a lot of peace and calmness through this ongoing effort of practicing mindfulness. The second challenge, which is very, very relevant, in fact, I tried to put most of the relevant points, there will be distractions all around. There'll be noise, there'll be crosstalks, there will be judgments, your emotions, which will be a major source of your distractions. So there will be distractions. Again, try to be more calm, be more mindful. Mindfulness leads to the reduction of your distractions. by practicing being more calm, trying to resolve your problems of your present moment and not dwell into the past. Minimizing your distractions will also make you develop healthy relationships, not just with your team members and organizations, but also with your family members. The third point, which I thought was quite pertinent, was progress just doesn't come quickly. It's a deliberate effort. It's a conscious effort to be mindful. It is extremely slow. Rather, I can say, I'd like to say progress is painfully slow. There will be times when you would want to give up and detach yourself. It is impossible to be mindful when you're dwelling in the past and being obsessed with what has happened, even if something was bad. So it doesn't happen quickly. It takes time to build up. You may want to give up. Your own goals that you have set could be a challenge for your mindfulness. So when we teach in personality growth and we talk of your soft skills, we say set smart goals. Your goals should be realistic, they should be achievable. So don't set goals which will put you into stress and tension. And the last point for challenges to mindfulness would be, you may want to be anywhere but just now in the present moment. Anywhere else, I just don't want to live in the present. That's a great challenge. So even the most enlightened masters on earth have had to deal with situations and chaotic thoughts. The difference is that they have learned to accept the problems and master those challenges and live in the present moment. Well, friends, as we come to a close of this session, Thich Nhat Hanh, a very famous philosopher, I would like to bring your attention to some of the thoughts shared by Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh is a global spiritual leader, poet, and peace activist. He is renowned and well known across the globe for his powerful teachings and best-selling writings on mindfulness and peace. Thich Nhat Hanh inspires us to be in the present every time, every moment, even during our working days. This can be done with one single action, friends. Being aware of your current situation, being aware of your breath, and you will be able to be aware of what you're doing and how you feel. So step by step, you will be able to visualize the reality. The interesting point that we can use in this mindful model of leadership is to carefully define our choices with the conscious output for the business, not just for the business, but also your personal life. Our parting thoughts on mindfulness. I'd like to end with a quote and then we have a short video. Our parting thoughts, I have a quote by Michael Carroll, author of The Mindful Leader, 10 Principles for Bringing Out the Best in Ourselves. For mindful leaders, cultivating such organizational health requires first and foremost a mastery of your organizational conduct, eliminate toxicity, appreciate health, build trust, send clear messages, embrace resistance, understand blindness, accept invitations, heal wounds, and above all, be realistic. By Michael Carroll, author of The Mindful Leader, 10 Principles for Bringing Out the Best in Ourselves and Others. So friends, I would like to close my session on mindfulness and mindful leadership with a short video which would summarize the thoughts which I shared in this session.
Leadership today is really demanding. There's rapidly increasing globalization. There's enormous amounts of data. Really demanding. There's rapidly increasing globalization. Leaders have to There's enormous amounts of data in conditions which have never been as challenging. Leaders have since the last war make decisions, and they've got to make smart, effective decisions and keep themselves in really good shape in order to do that. Leadership today, along with Megan Rates and other colleagues at Ashridge, is rapidly increasing. We conducted the world's first research into a multi-session mindful leader training program. We recruited 57 senior business leaders. Gave them 8 weeks of mindfulness training. In conditions what we found is that those leaders who came on the program and did not at least
I'd like to play that video again. There was an overlap. Just a second, friends.
Leadership today is really demanding. There's rapidly increasing globalization. There's enormous amounts of data. There's constant market disruption. Leaders have to make decisions in conditions which have never been as challenging, certainly not since the last war. And they've got to make smart, effective decisions and keep themselves in really good shape in order to do that. Along with Megan Rates and other colleagues at Ashridge Business School, we conducted the world's first research into a multi-session mindful leader training program. We recruited 57 senior business leaders and gave them 8 weeks of mindfulness training. What we found is that those leaders who came on the program and did at least 10 minutes of mindfulness practice a day developed 5 key capacities. First of all, they became more empathic, better able to connect with other people. They became better able to focus, to place their attention where they wanted it to be for a time and to keep it there. They became better able to see their own perspective as that, just as a perspective, and to see others' perspective as simply a different perspective. And that enabled them better to sort of negotiate in terms of, well, I've got my perspective, you've got yours, let's work this out. They became better able to regulate their own emotions, so they became less reactive and a bit more open-heartedly responsive. And finally, they became better able to adapt to changing circumstances. So they were able to shift and change as circumstances around them changed. Those 5 cognitive and emotional skills meant that the leaders who trained in mindfulness became better able to collaborate. They became more personally resilient, and they became better at making decisions in the face of enormous complexity. We need leaders like that more than ever before. All it takes is a short training course and 10 minutes a day of daily practice. The world's crying out for mindful leaders today. If people can only do that, then they can begin to change the world for the better.
Well, with that, we come to the end of this webinar on mindfulness and mindful leadership. I'm open to questions. Let me just... Do we have any questions? Good session. Kiran, do we have any questions? I'm open for questions, friends. Well, in the chat box, there are all comments about the session. Any questions? We keep it open for 5 minutes. Can you just go through if there are any questions? Ma'am, can you please tell us what are the sources we can follow to start practicing mindfulness? That's a good question by one Miss Usha says, ma'am, can you please tell us what are the sources we can follow to start practicing mindfulness? There is no strict technique. There is no, it's not found outside. You need to regulate your mind, have self-control, exercise your thoughts more judiciously, and practice being non-judgmental. I would repeat that again. We tend to make a passing remark on anyone without even thinking about the person's overall personality, individual's personality. So let's not be judgmental. Let's not make quick remarks, and let's exercise restraint and control over what we speak, and especially in public. That could be an important source. And let go of your thoughts. It's easier said than done, friends. I'm repeating, it's easier said. This session on mindfulness has also enabled me to think of how to let go of your emotions. We hang on to our past emotions. Let us let go of them. Well, that is one question which I saw. Informative session. Ma'am, can you share the presentation? How to work, there's one question from Lekana. How to work on our negative imaginations which crop up in our minds. How to work on the negative thoughts and negative imaginations. You can't stop your negative thoughts from coming in and intruding in your mind, but you can definitely have a control over them and not them impact your work. Your negative thoughts can have an impact on your speech, in your telephonic conversation that you're having with your client. So again, be calm and let not your negative emotions drive you. You know, we talk of locus of control in OB, isn't it? When the outside factors are impacting your thoughts, let not have a strong internal locus of control. Yes, Kiran, next question. Ma'am, good morning. Is mindful leadership considered as dependent variable in research? If we can consider, please suggest the variable that can be used to measure mindful leadership. Well, I can look into that, Ms. Anupama. It is dependent on various aspects. No, it is dependent on your emotions, your situations. So we could think of those variables. It is a good topic for research, and good research articles can be taken forward where what are the various variables that can be considered? Your current situation, the stress, your targets, all those could be looked into, which leads into a leader being successfully mindful. I have another question from Pallavi. What are the activities which bring mindfulness amongst employees? Being mindful in your tasks, living in the present moment when you're sitting in a meeting, let go of your cell phone when you're having lunch. Very difficult. All of us are multitasking with your cell phone. Listen attentively, not just to your boss, but also to your colleagues. Those are some of the mindful activities. Then there's a question. We are mostly mindful when we are in public. How can we be mindful when no one is watching us because we have no control over our thoughts? Well, Lohita, P-Setti Lohita. Good thoughts to ponder over, self-control. When nobody is watching you, you are watching yourself. Remember, there is one Almighty. You're answerable to your conscious. You know, in organizations, when the biometric doesn't work, sometimes you're answerable to your conscious that you've logged in so many hours, mandatory hours. It's your conscious to whom you're answerable. You're getting paid by your organization. So you're answerable to your own conscience. I liked this question. You know, we have no control over our thoughts when we're alone. All right. To that, I will just say, you're answerable to your own self and to your conscience. Does it lead? I have a lot of other questions. Kiran, do we have the time? Yeah, 5 more minutes. Does it lead to become down to earth, way of good feelings and humanity? Well, somewhere when I was preparing for this session, mindfulness, yes, is a contrast to being aggressive. So that's a point well taken. Aggressive leadership sometimes could be being tough with your colleagues. So mindful leadership is taking a step backward, being much more calmer, and however, being with your team. Walk the talk. I could use that phrase. Ma'am, also considering the speed of decision making required at this point of time, how practical is it to follow any framework to make split-second decisions? No. Mindfulness does not help you to take decisions in a split second. It is a deliberate and conscious effort. You ponder over your thoughts and your actions. And that is when you suggest of the interventions. It cannot be done in a split second. I hope I've answered that question. Is it to follow any framework to make split second decisions? It cannot. You cannot take split decisions by practicing mindfulness. Do we need to attend classes or read book on mindfulness where we should start towards mind? Yes, you could, friends, this question, Prachi Mishra. Do we need to attend classes? You could read a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, by Janice Maritano. She's a practitioner in the area of mindfulness. Ma'am, some way to motivate oneself when pressured down by challenges. Keep patting your back. Did you not see that movie, Three Idiots? All is well, all is well. Keep patting yourself. If you're pressured down and bogged down by challenges, you will not move ahead. Again, let me tell you, these can be theoretically stated very nicely in the presentation, but you need to remind yourselves of your own strengths. And to overcome your weaknesses, you have to remind yourself of the good tasks that you have done which motivated you to come forward. You will have difficulties. What are the motivational factors that creates the best? With mindfulness, think positive, have self-restraint. Naupal Reddy, what are the motivational factors? Be positive. Ma'am, some way to motivate oneself. Okay, I've taken that question. Should all organizations keep a session of mindfulness practice for their employees regularly? Yes, I strongly recommend. Big companies, I gave some examples, big companies in India are also creating space for employees to sit, relax, be mindful, and come back and bounce back to your work, to your daily routine. It is relevant, it is important. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Excellent, very good information. We can finish now, ma'am. Okay. Right. Thank you so much, students. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, all my friends, for patiently listening to this session. I hope I was able to ring in a bell and create some kind of it has triggered the concept of mindfulness in each one of us. Not just being a mindful leader, but being mindful as an individual also in our personal life and professional life. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Thank you. We have one, where is it? I can't see. Avinash. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Okay. Is there any other question? Ma'am, you can forward the recorded session. Yes, we will. Our team is compiling the videos of all the presentations. We shall share the video recording. Thank you so much. Thank you.